God bless you.
Thank you. See more people waiting. I'll call the Property Management Committee meeting for January 23rd, 2005 to order. Madam Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Director Sheldon.
Present.
Director Flory. Here. Director Sarmiento. Director Nguyen. Director Yo. Director Anthony.
There.
Director Bilodeau.
Present.
Director Sadoo.
Here.
Director Duane. Director Green. Yes, we have quorum with our openings.
Bruce, are there any items received too late to be agenda? At this point in the agenda, we have visitor participation for an item for public comments, an item not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
There you go. You're up.
Thank you. Yes, I am up. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Director Bilodeau for arriving on time today and being here. Yeah, that's great.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic, you know, because at the last meeting, you chastised me for not showing up at a meeting that I don't get paid to be at, and I actually lose money to be at, unlike all of you who make some pretty good money coming here, and or that is regardless of how late you come or how early you go. And looking back at 10 years of the minutes, seeing that you have a rather ironic record in that regard. I listened to the meeting on the audio that I got the next day. And I want to thank you for at least voting to put a link to the audio up online, although I think it would be a lot better, frankly, if you just uploaded the audio up there and people could just click on it rather than bothering your staff constantly to have to email them something. But I thought one thing that struck me was the disdain that was showed for the public right to participate, as well as disabled people. And one of the arguments for not voting for streaming by those who voted against it was that it would lead to a legal requirement to have closed caption for the disabled, even though your legal counsel pointed out that one of the purported benefits of streaming to begin with has always been that it's an additional way for the disabled to participate. And it kind of struck home because with me, because the reason I was at home, Director Bilodeau, is because I have a disabled father. And as some people in here know, he's 94 and a half years old. He's a he is a veteran of World War II, and he is disabled mentally with dementia, and also physically with congestive heart failure, kidney failure, and just about everything else. And so I decided that I would stay home and take care of him because I couldn't get a care worker to come down here, or to come to my house rather, so that I could come down here to listen to the board, look at the board meeting and participate. But had there been streaming, of course, I would have been able to at least watch it at home live, as I did the night before when I was watching the city council meeting at Huntington Beach when they were repealing the ban on plastic bags, which, by the way, Director Flory, is why many people were not here. Because as I'm sure Kathy knows, that was a big deal, and hundreds of people were at that meeting. It went until late hours of the night. 67 people spoke. Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to say that there's a lot of irony in that meeting. You're right, Director Bilodeau. And if people had streaming, they could participate a little bit more easily in the meetings. And I think that you should perhaps do a little soul searching and cast aside your arrogant disdain for the public. Thank you.
Item is consent. Items 1 through 2. Is there a motion on consent?
I'll move the consent now.
I'll second it.
Motion by Director Flory, second by Director Bilodeau. All in favor? You think they take a roll call?
Director Sheldon?
Yes.
Director Flory? Yes. Director Anthony?
Yes.
Director Bilodeau?
Yes.
Director Sadoo?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to item number 3. The hogging lease item, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Is
So we'll
there-
take it.
Yeah, yes, your staff presentation.
We don't have a presentation, but the committee will recall that at the December 17th board meeting, the board directed staff to begin negotiations on the renewal of our new lease with the Hawks for the gun range, shooting range. But at that time, staff was asked to bring it back to the property meeting for any further discussion on potential issues. I know Director Flory just received a letter today from Director Flory, and she had visited the Rahog East Hold, I think last week with Bill Hunt, who couldn't be here today, but so we're bringing this back to the committee for further discussion. One of the steps that staff has taken, we haven't started any negotiations for the term sheet yet. We have been in discussions with TRC, which is an environmental, it's an engineering firm, but they do environmental work. We're in discussion with them over a scope of work to do a preliminary environmental management assessment of the Rahog shooting range, which would include such items as reviewing an environmental stewardship plan, looking at their operation and maintenance plan, looking at their best management practices, as well as looking at various maintenance records, and then coming back with a letter recommending potential further steps. So that's where staff is, and I'll open it, put it back to the committee.
Any comments, John?
Well, I put my comments in the letter. These are the issues that were
Of
important
course,
for
to read
me.
it carefully.
And they absolutely jive with what Bruce has just said, because that's what I'm after is, Dennis and I have spoken in the past about his belief that a fund should be established in order to deal with remediation, but at this point, we don't know whether there's contamination, what the extent of the contamination is, and how could we even come up with an idea for creating a fund if we don't know what the scope of it is. So that's my biggest concern right now. Also, when it comes to negotiating the terms of the lease, we need to know what's going on out there. What are the kinds of incomes that are being generated? I understand that there's a sublease there. I don't know if there's one sublease or more than that, but it would be useful to know what the income is derived from the sublease, so we have some context here. When you go to rent an office in a building, a commercial building, the landlord, the manager generally has some sense about how productive a business is going to be, and that is how you set your leases.
Don't we get their annual income? We do.
I don't, it's not a requirement of the lease.
Good point.
It's not a requirement of the lease.
So first of all, everyone at staff has been very, very cooperative in one, copying to me a chronology of the leases, because all we had when we looked back to our item number 3 and we looked at what past board actions were, it only went back to 1995. The reality
It
is,
goes back farther than that.
yes,
The
it goes
current
back.
lease, yeah.
The current lease goes
leasehold.
back to 1995, but the district's relationship as a lessor with the Rahagi family goes back to 1971. I had no idea. That predates anybody on
Mike
this
Rahagi's
board.
father started it back
Link
then.
Rahagi,
Before any of us
yes.
were on this board.
Yes, and then that lease with Link Rahagi was ultimately assigned to Mike and Betty Rahagi, and then later it was amended several times in many different respects. But I am gathering that the property we're talking about is 135 acres. I'm not certain if that's it or not, so
Oh, I
number
think
one.
that is about it.
Yeah, number one, I'd like to see a map of the district property and how the lease fits within that property. And if you just go down this, number 2 is an inventory of all activity areas, structures, including offices, gun bays, shooting ranges, residences, storage buildings, etc. on the property. We need to know what's going on out there. And one of the things that came about from my tour with Bill Hunt is nobody's quite sure who's living out there, is there a we know there's a caretaker, but are there families living out there? What's going on? 3, an assessment of contaminants, that's Bruce's, what he just got through saying. Inventory, number 4, inventory of subleases. 5, a historical audit of all receipts. That's pushing it to go back to 2000. But it was more than apparent to me that along about 2000, when we were renegotiating leases, there was some question whether or not cash receipts were being accounted for in such a way that the district was getting what it should have gotten. And 6, an audit of any OCWD expenses, if any, related to the property in the last 10 years. Does the district spend any money out there? I don't know. And nobody can seem to answer these questions, so kind of basic stuff. And then number 7, a description of regulatory agencies, if any, that regulate any of the activities that the Rahagis conduct on the leased property. If so, do the Rahagi-sponsored activities comply with all regulations? Has there been an audit of that? And then 8, in the absence of regulatory agencies, is there some association or standards that govern such activity? And the reason is obvious. We're the landlord. And a plaintiff's attorney with his hot to done liability will go after this district no matter what our indemnity clauses look like in the leasehold. So, pretty basic stuff. I'm sure that the other directors could think of other things, but in my life, before I could approve an extension of a lease, particularly a 20-year lease, I would have to have answers to these questions. The Rahagis have been on that property since 1943. If there were no question that they were good stewards of the property during that 43-year period of time, I probably wouldn't be asking these questions. But there is a question whether or not they have been good stewards of the property, and I want that question answered before we decide as a board to extend the lease for another 20 years.
Who's asked that question?
Pardon me?
Who's asked that question? Whether they've been
Good stewards. When we have contamination issues that derive from the activities that this particular lessee has engaged in on the property, and there is no indication that there were shooting ranges before that. I asked Mr. Dozier that, and he said as far as he knew it was used for agricultural purposes prior to 1971. So if there's contamination, that's part of the assessment. Where does it come from? And if it is there, I think it would be a tough argument to say that the Rahagis have been good stewards of the property. Inquiring minds want to know.
Thank you for your research.
Any other questions? And I agree. I've looked through this just briefly, and I agree with some of the suggestions that you've made as to what we want to look at as we negotiate the lease. And so, would we want to have staff look at this and come back to us? So I know we're not taking any action this month or next month. We
There's
want to
still
have
time, yeah.
staff take a look at
There's
this.
a whole year.
Yeah.
Just a comment, if I may. As Bruce outlined, what we would propose is to do this initial preliminary investigation, just looking at best practices, looking at the safety aspect, looking at whether they have certain mitigation plans in place. And that kind of being the first step, that could lead to a further study if the results of this initial study would warrant it. We think that we can do this under my signing authority, so my intent was to move forward with this initial work and then come back to the board with the results, and if there's any additional work that would be required, seek board approval at that time.
I could support that.
So we have the TRC entity do some phase 1 and 2, phase 2?
No, it's not a phase 1, it's just a preliminary environmental assessment. It's mostly looking at records, looking at.
That's phase 1.
Just like a phase one.
It's like a phase 1.
Great.
They'd also review aerial photographs, looking at prior uses versus, and how the layout changed over time as well.
Because apparently the gun ranges were at one point located on a different part of the
On
property.
the other
It's
side
no
of the
longer
river,
used
up
for
on
that.
the bluff.
Right,
Yeah.
on the south bluff,
And
as
we did
opposed to the
that
north.
cleanup there years ago.
And, well, that's important to know. I don't know if that's the case or not, so.
Mr. Chairman, I think what we're talking about here is a very good approach. They've been there a long time. They're a lot better now than they used to be because in the old days, things were pretty wild woolly out
And
there.
you know what, I get that.
And they have been improving with us for a long, long time. I suggest, Mr. Chairman, maybe we ask the President to appoint an ad hoc committee to sort of follow this and to work with the staff and follow up on Jan's list. I'd suggest Jan, maybe Dennis Bilodeau, and I'll volunteer just because I have the history.
Good enough.
Do this.
That's the committee.
You know, while we're discussing this, we do
Did you hear
have
that?
the,
Judy, right?
we do have the property owner here right now, or we have the leasing here right now. For the property owner. Is there any, I mean, there's no need to respond to these comments, but I don't know if you want to say anything that's germane to what was just now raised. I have a comment regarding that, and please only be germane to what we just now talked about. We don't need, you know, other information. I do have a comment though before you speak. Janice, as it relates to the good steward comment, you know, how long did you serve on the board before you left the board?
For 4 years,
4 years.
98 through
So,
2002.
in that time period, this board, and while you served on the board before I was here, ultimately the responsibility lies in all of our hands. We own the
Agreed.
property.
I raised
And
these
to-
issues then.
And to say that, you know, that they've not been a good steward is really to say that the district has not been a good steward.
I didn't say that they were not good stewards. I said that this assessment is to determine whether they were or not. I did not.
Okay.
I actually didn't, those words didn't fall
Well,
out
then
of
that
my mouth.
assessment would determine whether this board itself in this district was a good steward as well, because we are ultimately responsible.
Yes.
And we all need watched over, so I would not just point there, I think that there's collective responsibility here.
Agreed.
And, because that's what the board's job. We brought a lawsuit against the Campbell Family Trust in Santa Ana, against a, you know, elderly woman in her trust, because their tenant released contamination in the ground. And so we sued the property owner who was ultimately responsible. So I think we can't just point out as a tenant, not we all collectively. I think the point here, the greater one is that we need to assess what we have, and this business, I believe, does a good job. I've been out there and I've observed them to have good policies and procedures, and I believe they provide a great public service in allowing for what they do. And I'm, you know, generally in support of the overall type of operation, but we have to make sure that everything's done correctly and that our land is clean. So I think we all want to collectively take a positive approach to this. That's my general, you know, feeling
I
on
agree
this,
with the chairman's
on
comments.
this issue.
That's perfect.
So-
We didn't take any action, Mr. Chairman? Or just-
Well, consider the context here. We're talking about negotiating with somebody who virtually has an exclusive right to use the property,
Yeah.
as evidenced
And
by
at least with us.
being on it for 43 years.
We put out the
And
bid
so-
years ago too, you know. We put a lot
Well,
of
that
bid.
I don't know about. I've heard Dennis
I
say that
do.
10 years ago that did happen.
Longer than that.
But this is almost an exclusive lease on
It is an
public
exclusive.
lands. And
Yeah,
we're,
at least
and
to
we
one
are
person at a
talking
time.
about 20 years extension of that lease, which would be 63 years. That has value. And I don't know that I've come across that too many times before. Granted, my experience is quite limited, but 63 years to one family, you've got to show me a good reason.
Jan, I think we're with you on this thing. Why don't you go
Okay.
ahead and check out your.
All right,
list?
I think I'm responding to what Steve's thing is, but I did not say that the Rahagis were not good stewards. I'm saying that's a question that needs to be answered.
About everybody, about the entire district.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes,
I think Dennis was before me, so I'll follow.
Yeah, I think the one distinction we have to make, Jan, is that this site though is, you have to get a conditional use permit from the county. And I don't think that anybody but the Rahagi family could get a conditional use permit out there.
At this time.
That's just my feeling. And a conditional use permit can be $500,000. And I don't know that, but for us giving them or someone else a long-term lease, there's no way they can amortize that cost over the time to recruit that. So our options are somewhat limited by that, of course. So,
Well, consider this. is.
You know, I hate to interrupt you, but please respond to Dennis, but this is not germane to our item today, and let's move on to our next item. But I don't want to cut you off.
Vincent,
Please complete your thought, Jan, and then let's move on to the next item.
I don't need to go any further. I think you were going to invite the Rahagi family to comment.
If they think they need to comment as
Just
to what
let them nod their
we've
heads.
just now discussed today.
1 minute?
You can say yeah, as long as you want, as long as I hope it's
I'll
just
defer
germane.
my time to that.
I don't mind you talking, I just want to.
Then you get about 10 minutes then.
I can say something like that, lock the doors and I'll talk for 2 hours and you're in trouble, you know. I'm Larry Buxton. I've been working with the Rahaga since 1971 when I was one of the managers working for the water district. I was an employee here. And so I've watched them throughout the years and everything that they've done out there and how the leases move from one location to another. As far as some of the things you commented about, the studies that are being done, there are also some that you're proposing. There are also studies being done by the county of Riverside along the same lines. So these are going to dovetail, together quite well. And just on the issue of the inventory of what's out there, the conditional use permit is providing for new facilities almost entirely. So it's pretty much going to be new buildings out there with just a couple that are left. But we have a map that's prepared that can show you exactly, what's there now and what's going to be placed out there. So we welcome your proposal that you're making today. We are instigating on our own some best management practices, ideas concerning the property. And so we're looking forward to continuing to work with you for, see, they're now moving into the 4th generation of Rahagas that are out there. So I really appreciate that very
You
much.
started there when you were in kindergarten, right?
Well, let's see. Don Owens told me from, I was working for a radio station, and he captured me. Said work from this.
One quick question. Can you pronounce your name? Rahaga. Rahaga.
Yeah.
Okay, I
No.
always mispronounce. That's okay.
Not Rahagi, Rahaga.
Rahaga.
We know the Segerstroms are frequently called Segerstrom. So it's Rahaga, thank you.
Whether it's correct, I don't know, but that's the way we
All
go
right,
about it.
so we have some direction to staff, and let's, any other comments or questions as this item, we can move on to the next item.
I'm sorry, is the chairman announcing public comments right now? Or opportunity for public comments?
Thank you for pointing it out to me.
Yeah.
Let me go back
Sure.
here, and I think we do need, if you'd like to speak, I
Yeah.
didn't get a card, but if we don't have a card.
Well, you didn't ask for one, but
It's okay,
yeah.
I didn't ask
Yeah.
for it, so,
Yeah.
yes, we will take public comment, please.
Sure, I just wanted to say the board might consider, if you're going to make an ad hoc committee and who you're going to put on the committee, that there are 3 members on the board as a whole, and 2 in this room, who received between them about $10,000 in campaign contributions in the past year, and some of those are sizable amounts. In the case of Director Bilodeau, it was about $2,000. So that might be something you want to consider if you're going to have an ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Well,
Mr.
I
Chairman,
got 0.
just to
Jack,
correct
I
the
got
record,
0.
Mr. Earl is, that's not correct.
Well, those are your records that you filed.
You're incorrect, Mr. Earl.
No, no, I'm not.
So item number 4, marketing of oil, gas, and mineral rights, there's staff report.
Yes, just a brief report on this. Back in February, the board had authorized staff to execute an agreement with Paragon Partners to do feasibility analysis on oil, gas, and mineral rights on district property. Last month, staff had come back to the committee with a report on the oil and gas rights. And the gist of it was that Paragon was recommending that in the Anaheim area, that the district not pursue any oil marketing or gas buying.
Thank you.
Oil or gas marketing of the properties. However, in Prado, because there had been oil production in Prado in the past, their recommendation was that if the district were interested in pursuing oil in Prado, that would be the place. Well, that would be the place to do it. The committee had asked staff to go back and review mitigation agreements in Prado. So we discussed it with Dick Zimble, who's the Natural Resources Director, who had advised that although there's nothing in the mitigation agreements that prohibit any oil exploration or production, it would definitely have an impact on mitigation land, and any disturbed land would have to be mitigated at a 5-to-1 ratio. So when you look as part of any proposal going forward. So I'm just coming back to the committee reporting that if the district wanted to proceed to the next step, which would be developing a marketing development report, have Paragon develop that, that'd be an additional $29,600, which at the time of the original approval, both were approved with the condition that staff would come back to the board for the phase 2, for the second phase of this. And that concludes my report. And the recommended action is just direct staff.
Any questions for staff?
No, I'd recommend we just receive and file this. It's pretty obvious to me that we probably should just shelf this effort for the time being, given the world oil market. I can't imagine anybody would read and respond if we put out an RFP at this point.
Any other comments?
Could I just ask?
I'm going to open up for the, go ahead, Jack. Any other director questions or comments? I want to open up to the public if there's any public comments.
No, thank you.
No?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I was gonna second it.
Okay.
I think it's even more expensive or more troublesome with a 5-to-1 ratio for mitigation. Whoa. You know, in Prados, I think
That doesn't disturb me because there's oil in the hills that's valuable potentially, and it's more I don't think the Corps would really want any disturbing of any of that back there, and allow you to mitigate it. But I would need to read this thoroughly, and I've read through it and really understand it to put more money into this project. I'm not prepared to do that as well, and that's
What do you
my.
recommend?
Well, I'll second Dennis's motion. That's a motion.
That was a motion.
Table
And we
the
just
item.
receive and file it
Receive and file.
and not take any further action for now.
Mr. Chairman? Question, please, Mr. Chairman?
Of course. I'm sorry.
Does Mr. Marcus have any comment on this, one way or the other? Do you have any advice for us from your point of view?
No, I think receive and file is appropriate action.
I believe Director Dwayne had been the director that's really been behind pushing for this.
That's why he was afraid to come today.
I didn't mean to throw him under the bus. Okay, so we have a motion to receive and file. We take the roll call, please.
Director Sheldon?
Yes.
Director Flory?
Yes.
Director Sarmiento?
Yes.
Director Nguyen?
yes.
Director Anthony?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
The oil price is $50 a barrel. I mean, it's still essentially-
There wouldn't be any oil production from this for
Today.
half a decade, so we're not looking at today, but I think we have a lot of other fish to fry that are more easily accessible. Update on the Water Basin?
Ball Road Basin, so staff's coming back to the committee now that CP, Competitive Power Ventures has,
May I interrupt you? I made the motion on the last item and then the alternate, so I think
Uh-oh.
to would be correct.
Uh-oh.
I think you're, I think we-
I'll step in and make the motion.
You're not on the list, so I don't think.
My apologies.
Nice try.
Motion by Director Flory,
You could
Director,
substitute me. as
I'll
the
be the
motion.
if you could substitute Director Flory.
I should say technically our rules
You don't even-
limit who can vote, but don't say anybody can make a
Oh,
motion.
yeah, that's your fault then. That's your fault.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's terrible. That's
Hey,
terribly
now
fair.
I like
Well, for
No, that's
advisory,
terrible.
for an advisory committee, we can change if we want, although